Secretary General Cleophas Malala, what he said. So with me in studio is seated on my immediate left is Dr. Bernard Mogesa, Chief Executive Officer, the CEO of the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights. They've been very vocal about the deaths and the injuries that have occurred during the anti-government protests, the 3-day protests that were called for by the Azimio team. And seated next to him is the Deputy Governor of Wajir County, Ahmed Muhammad. And of course, next to him is Makueni Senator Dan Manzu joining us in this conversation. Let me just begin with the Senator. Are you interested in joining the government through Nusum Kate?
No, not at all. I think Cleophas Malala, being an illegal member of the cabinet, is suffering from some hallucinations. We have clearly said that we are not after Nusum Kate. We are after reducing the cost of living of Kenyans, and that's an act of parliament which went through fraudulently. We have challenged it in court. So far, the court decisions have been favorable to Kenyans, and we are even expecting one from the Court of Appeal today, whereby it has already rejected, keeping the act in place, and there's a 3-judge bench which will deal with this act. But at the same time, the government can save Kenyans that trouble by having talks, the bipartisan talks, reviving them again, discussing about this particular act and the things which were fraudulently passed through the National Assembly reversed. I'll be surprised if the government quickly reverses that particular position they recently taken to frustrate and make a cost of living very high for Kenyans. So I believe the courts will be able to assist Kenyans. We have a very good case. Personally, I'm one of the lawyers in that petition. I'm representing petitioner number 7. And there are quite a number of serious Kenyans and organizations which have petitioned against this act of parliament, which was done unlawfully. And there are very many illegal things the country is doing, and that is resulting into high-handedness and raising the cost of living of Kenyans, overtaxed Kenyans. If you do overtaxing, then you increase the poverty in the country and you collect even lesser taxes. That's a way to fail a state.
And DG, your side, the government's side, has been very vocal with saying, they're looking for a way of getting into the government, and that is what Senator Manzo said. They're not even interested in joining the government through a handshake. But they're saying, let's do this through the bipartisan talks. And these bipartisan talks have actually not been successful so far.
And thank you for having me. And I think it is good to get it right that Honorable Raila, many times without number, has said that he is not interested in power sharing this time around with the current government in place. And for the record, I'm the DG for Wajir on an ODM ticket. So let's accept the fact that on the face value, on prima facie value, that he is not interested, or Azimio is not interested in power sharing. But again, that also, there's more to it than that, because if you're not interested in power sharing, and we continue with demonstrations, will these demonstrations really help eventually? Will it address the issue of cost of living in the country as the case is today? Demonstrations per se, on a standalone, will bring awareness of the problem in place, but continuous demonstrations will not necessarily iron out the problem in place. Awareness, yes, but demonstrations alone will ignore the complexities, economic complexities, that cause the higher cost of living. So I think there's more to this question of cost of living than the continuous demonstrations that is in place. And we have seen demonstrations also bring in safety to human lives, and they also bring in destruction of property, lives and limbs. So what we need now is back to the talks. A way back to the talks. The truth that is extended by the president needs to, of course, it may be seen as a bit casual in the way it was addressed. But the point is, we eventually need dialogue. That is the only solution that required now.
Dialogue, DG, this dialogue is something that has not worked ever since the bipartisan committee was put in place. The Azimio side saying Kenya Kwanza side is not responsive in a good way and is not respecting even their demands. So how sure are we that this bipartisan talks will be successful should Azimio team decide to go back to the table?
What is the alternative? The alternative is not to be in the streets. The alternative is not to be continuous demonstrations at the expense of the economy. The alternative is not being out there and losing lives and limbs. The only solution we have is talks. So let's get back. We keep trying and keep knocking. The more we try, the more the chances of agreeing. And eventually it will boil down to us ironing out things on the table, not out there in the streets. People are already in desperate situations. Life is a bit hard, seriously hard for the common man in the street. So we will only stir up the case and exaggerate the problem, exacerbate the problem, if we remain in the streets. The solution is getting to the round table and talk.
Okay. And Dr. Mogesa, these numbers, there's a numbers actually that the government seems to be, if I may put it that way, seems to be afraid to tell Kenyans the number of deaths, the number of injuries. The only thing we saw the other day, the PS Raymond talking about was, an officer died and these are the number of officers who are injured during the demonstrations. But what is the actual figure of Kenyans who've died and the Kenyans who've been injured? And why are these numbers being hidden? And who killed these Kenyans?
Let me first of all begin by saying that we as a commission are still documenting the numbers to ascertain the exact number of deaths. But so far what we have been able to see even reported in social media, and we have to verify so that we ascertain exactly what numbers we are talking about. And in yesterday's press statement that we released when we addressed the media, we did indicate that within 2 weeks we will be able to tell the Kenyans how many people have been killed during these particular demonstrations. So we will be able to come back with a definite figure so that the Kenyans know who died, where, even the disaggregation in terms of the gender, and even look at the age, because we even have seen very young school children, being shot as young as 13-year-old. So we'll be able to show that, and also even demonstrate that special interest groups have also been, attacked in a way. The disabled, for instance, records indicate that, women, the older persons, which then questions our ability, as a country and as a government to protect, this segment of population in line with the provisions of our constitution.
But Dr. Mogesa, the question here is, so why is the government afraid? Okay, really not afraid, but why is the government not giving out the exact figure? Or actually telling Kenyans, these are the numbers of Kenyans who lost their lives during the Azimio demonstrations?
The government is under obligation to document the deaths and tell the Kenyans the number of people who have died for purposes of accountability. So for us as a commission, we will still be pushing that these numbers be disclosed. Even where they have died, it is the obligation of the government or those state organs to tell the Kenyans that during these demonstrations, this number of people died. It does not matter. The citizens are human beings. The police, if they die, they are human beings. We must document for purposes of accountability. So as far as we are concerned as a commission, the government is under obligation to document any deaths, regardless of how they have happened, for purposes of record and also for purposes of accountability.
All right, a short commercial break here on a KTN News Center. But when we come back, I'd really like to pick the mind of Senator Manzo, who is a member of the Azimio team, why they still want to call for demonstration, despite the fact that even yesterday, the Azimio team led by Raila Odinga held a vigil for 30 Kenyans.